Every time you decide to buy a new video game, you have to hope for a lot of things. You have to hope that you'll enjoy the story, that the mechanics fit the world, that the game looks nice, or maybe just that the game feels nice. It's all a lot to hope for, and not every game gets it just right for you. After all, every game only gets one shot to prove itself. That is, except for Octopath Traveler. This recent SquareEnix game offers just what the title presents, 8 separate stories, any combination of which you can spend as much or as little time in as you would like, hopping between characters and storylines at your own discretion. If you haven't touched the game already, you may be asking, 8 stories? How does that work? What's the point in following 8 stories? Well, we'll get into all the reasons soon enough, but let's just say that the 8 stories are to keep you interested. After all, RPGs are a huge time commitment. Having the ability to come and go as you please is a crucial part of this enthralling game, so let's take a look at how that system works in conjunction with the beautiful world and revamped combat as we discover what's so great about Octopath Traveler. The thing is, when you start playing an RPG, almost every single time you're guaranteed that you'll be sitting down for the long haul. Maybe it's not all at once, though. I've had RPGs I binged through in 3 or 4 days, and I've had other ones that I play for maybe an hour at a time, a few times a week, and the games last for weeks or months. But no matter your playstyle for these long-form games, they have to be able to hold your interest. If Octopath Traveler had only one story, there's no way it could keep you coming back. Don't get me wrong, it's really fun, but there just wouldn't be enough to it. As a lot of people online have commented, the combat system isn't exactly revolutionary. It's the same old Super Nintendo style turn-based combat with a bit of magic that we've literally seen for decades. However, there is one new mechanic that really juices up the whole system, which people don't give it enough credit for, but trust me, we'll get back to that soon enough. Even so, the combat isn't much more complicated than, say, Pokemon. But then again, that's not what they're going for. I mean, the battles can still be a lot of fun. I've played the game for over 80 hours and I've never run from a single battle. I get a kick out of them and they're not too tedious or time consuming. Honestly, the completionist part of me gets a little satisfaction out of every time I see an enemy's weaknesses bar fill up. It feels like checking all the boxes and it's just satisfying. And as you progress through different regions and use different characters or abilities, you get to see more of those combinations, even if the mechanics of the fight don't change along the way. The only place the combat really switches up much is during the boss fights for every chapter, especially early in the game. These are the fights where you know you have to strap in and protect yourself, because you're going to be here for a long time, and you don't know what this beast is going to throw at you. Some will send major debuffs against your team, some steal your items, knock you down with a powerful blow, spawn a flock of defenders, or any combination of these factors or more. Not knowing what a boss is going to throw your way is an excellent way to test your abilities. These are the moments when you have to start doing the math on how to power up your characters, which items to use or save. Maybe you can only heal a single character, but you know they'll be able to withstand whatever comes next. And sometimes, you really don't know. So, you have to pull yourself back from the brink. Those are the things that keep the combat interesting, even if it's only in the big story battles. But really, you're not playing an RPG for the random encounters. That would be like playing Fallout and being upset that the ghoul wasn't a complicated enemy. Sometimes enemies just fill the world and serve as roadblocks. So, without some mind-boggling combat system, the game has to keep you entertained with the story, or I guess, stories. 8 separate stories for you to explore. The beauty of it is that you don't have to play them all. You don't even have to play half of them. Sure, you may want to start a few of them, or at least see what every character has in store, and to build up your team, but as soon as you have a team you're confident with, you don't have to meet the other characters if you don't feel like it. You don't even have to stray from the one main quest line that's really piqued your interest. But hopefully you'll find more than one story that you're inclined to pursue. But that's when Octopath is really able to keep you playing. Once you're on a roll with multiple characters, you can stop and start each story as you please, and I mean at any time. Just leave the area, go do a completely different quest, or don't do a quest at all, just explore a random cave you stumbled across. Go play every chapter of a different character's story, whatever you want, and then you can pick up exactly where you were whenever you feel like it. Some people have lamented the fact that the stories don't really cross paths, and unfortunately, you do have to play for a long time before you start seeing the overlap. But in the sense of this game, that actually works very well. You're hearing the stories, goals, and wishes of 8 complete strangers who have no real interest in helping each other's missions. they're really just tagging along with each other because they all assume the counterparts will benefit themselves. In fact, some of the characters really disagree with each other. What else can you expect from a merchant and a thief traveling together? These characters have nothing to do with each other, and aside from the little bits of growth they do through intermittent dialogue, they don't become too thickly entwined with each other. And while on one hand you could argue that this is a fault in the story, the truth is, with the goal of this game being to have 8 separate stories, they can't be too closely tied, because if they were, then many people would be complaining that you have to play every story just to understand the one character you love. Then you would be stuck playing several hours of a character you hate or a storyline that bores you, and nobody wants that. The separation of storylines is true to the characters, the world, and the playstyle that the developers had in store from the start. Now, with all that said, let's return to talking about the combat system. After all, to me, the combat is far from disappointing. It's a smooth adaptation of a tried and true formula in the world of RPGs. Instead of the simple old HP and mana deciding your abilities, you now have HP and SP, which have the same relative functions as health and mana, as well as another meter of BP, or battle points. These battle points stock up one turn at a time and allow you to boost your main attacks and special abilities. You can use them to wallop your enemies 4 times in the same turn, or unleash massive magic damage, or prolong status effects for either your party or your enemies. These completely change the way the enemies are fought, because they tie in so nicely with the break mechanic in combat. What the break mechanic is once you discover the weaknesses of an enemy, you have to hit them a certain number of times with those weaknesses until they are quote-unquote broken. Once this happens, you incapacitate them for the next full turn, leaving them wide open to critical hits and disrupting any moves or combos they were charging up for. The way this ties in with the battle points is now you have to balance your BP with your enemy's defenses. So you can, for instance, save up one character's BP while another uses their stockpile to wear down an enemy's shield with multiple attacks. Once that enemy has been broken and left open to more damage, you supercharge your dormant character's special attack to deal massive amounts of damage to change the tide of battle into your favor. This is a much more fluid system of ebb and flow in battle, aside from the classic version of attack with your mana until you're out, then charge it back up and start again. And in order to use all of this to your advantage, you're going to have to understand the opponents you're facing. Your party has the options of physical weapons, being swords, daggers, lances, bows, axes, and staffs, alongside elemental attacks of fire, ice, wind, lightning, light, and dark. You're going to have to discover which combinations of physical and elemental attacks will wear down your opponents the quickest. There are a good number of hints as to which enemies might be weak to which weapons. First off, the way the world is constructed is that the 8 characters are all positioned around a sea in the center of the country. No matter who you choose to begin your adventure, the enemies nearby will be weak to at least one of the attacks at your disposal, whether it's a certain weapon or magic or what have you. This applies to both directions that you could leave from your starting town. Therefore, there will always be an overlap of weaknesses between every 2 towns, so you just have to know which locations are near you and you'll be able to assume the majority of weaknesses in an area. This becomes a little less accurate as you progress through the game and discover more of the world, obviously, but the same principle applies. If you're fighting in a certain city in Chapter 3 of any of the characters' storylines, then the game knows you have to have at least that character with you, no matter who else is in your team. So, even if you don't have the perfect arrangement in your party, you will always have at least one attack that can carry you through the chapter, allowing you to focus on that and use your turns wisely. The second way of discovering or assuming weaknesses is how the enemies look. For example, a flying enemy might be hard to reach with an axe, so why not try an arrow or a spear? On the other hand, trying to stab a skeleton wouldn't make a lot of sense, so maybe you'll need to crush it with a staff. Even the elements a creature is made of have counters. For example, a dark creature would be weak to light, fire to ice, and so on. Figuring out all of these combinations just by location and design greatly influence how you approach each battle in order to save time, energy, and resources. How you advance through the world is strongly impacted by which characters you choose. There are 4 basic ability mechanics in the game, but 2 ways to approach each one based on the heroes in your party. You can lead townsfolk through guiding or alluring, accumulate information by scrutinizing or inquiring, acquire items through bartering or stealing, or fight passersby by challenging or provoking. Some NPCs only respond to specific abilities, and only when you've improved your team's abilities, so spending more times with the characters you find the most convenient rewards your efforts by expanding your affluence in any ability. What's even more helpful in developing your playstyle is the use of secondary jobs. Throughout the countryside, in random nooks and crannies, you can find a large assortment of extra caves, forests, and temples that have nothing to do with the storylines of your 8 main characters. These hidden alcoves typically have their own side missions, including bosses and items for you to find, helping you gain equipment and experience on your journey. However, a few of these caves give you secondary jobs. These jobs are extra abilities such as Hunter, Cleric, or Scholar that you can then apply to the members of your party, giving them every ability available in the game. Of course, only one secondary job can be applied to each party member, but if you manage to find them all, then you could potentially have the abilities of all 8 classes in the game on your team at once, which includes their weaponry and abilities in battle. Exploration greatly increases your proficiency in combat when you've collected these new rewards. Before we finish up here, let's talk about the world you'll be exploring real quick. This isn't to downsize the importance or quality of the game's aesthetics, but it honestly is just a sense of passive enjoyment. The visual and aural features of the game may stand out during your first experience of them, but luckily, they mold themselves into the background for you to casually enjoy while continuing on your adventure. The game is designed visually in a sense of 2D HD, like a pop-up storybook. The majority of the landscapes look like they're built out of models and miniatures, and then populated with cute little sprite characters and buildings. The tilt shifting and added depth of focus makes the world feel much larger, and the dynamic lighting and colors add a sense of mystery and excitement to every little corner, from busy markets to abandoned forests. The stark differences in colors for every region serve incredibly well in diversifying the countryside, from the golden deserts to the dark green forests, the soft blue snowscapes, and everywhere in between. Even the enemies are, in a way, kinda cute. They can absolutely still be pretty threatening by design, and the majority of them are pretty unique, but otherwise they blend very well into the rest of the charm of the world. Octopath Traveler has a lot going for it. Well, actually, I guess that's the point. Sometimes a game's story just doesn't click with you, and for a long-form game like an RPG, that can be a big disappointment to have to stick with a story you're not enjoying just to get your money's worth out of a game. Few games give you the option to completely turn down a story and move on to another, or to change your mind at any turn of events. Octopath does an excellent job of presenting an entire buffet of options when it comes to which plots you follow, which paths you take, and which abilities and mechanics you take advantage of. Customizing your playthrough is crucial for all video games when it comes to making an adventure feel like your own. Filling a beautiful world with fun mechanics and plenty of options is guaranteed to give you your money's worth, because you're so much more likely to find something you really enjoy, and having your choices matter is a big part of that. SquareEnix has given you an opportunity to make those decisions for yourself, and that is what's so great about Octopath Traveler. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of What's So Great About Gaming, as we explored the many different aspects of Octopath Traveler. Sometimes it's hard to focus on the good aspects of gaming, especially with the jaded commentary world we live in, but there's so much out there for us to explore. If you think the same way, consider subscribing to be a part of our community so you're always in on the discussions. If you have a favorite series or single game that you think is great, leave a comment of your choice and we'll look into it. Thanks again for watching, and now go play a great game. We'll see you next time.